טובו אוהליך יעקב, משכנותיך ישראל. מה טובו אוהליך יעקב, משכנותיך ישראל. ואני ברוב חסדך אבוא ביתך, אשתחווה להיכל קודשך ביראתך. מה טובו אוהליך יעקב, משכנותיך ישראל. מה טובו אוהליך יעקב, משכנותיך ישראל. אדוני אהבתי מיום ביתך, ומקום משכן כבודך. ואני אשתחווה ואכרע לפני אדוני עושי. מה טובו אוהליך יעקב, משכנותיך ישראל. מה טובו אוהליך יעקב, משכנותיך ישראל. ואני תפילתי לך, אדוני את רצון, אלוהים ברוך חסדך, ענני באמת ישעך, ענני באמת ישעך. מה טובו אוהליך יעקב, משכנותיך ישראל. מה טובו אוהליך יעקב, משכנותיך ישראל.
All right, welcome. My name is Peter Talhofer, and this is my son.
Kellan.
And we are here today with our old congregation class, my old congregation class, and they are still meeting. And we're going to go around the room later, and people get a chance to introduce themselves and say why they're here. Today we're in Torah portion, Vayeishev, Genesis chapter 37, verse 1. If you want to find all these videos, you can go to my website at torahinmyheart.com and go to the videos page. You can go down to the bottom with Better Sheet and start and work your way up. But watch that video on how to read Hebrew first. We use two resources, Danny Ben-Gigi's Hebrew English Phonetic Bible and the Accordance app with ESV Strongs, which is free. Many people here have developed their own resources over the years. But for starting out, for you that are new, these are the two I recommend. We are here because we find treasures in the Torah through the Hebrew, and it encourages us and keeps us going. In fact, today, we're going to be looking at Joseph and the dreams that he told his brothers, then Pharaoh's dream that Joseph interpreted. And I am so excited about what we're going to be looking at today that I was sitting in a cafe yesterday eating a peanut butter cookie, and a complete stranger walked in, and I said to him, "Hey, do you know about Joseph?" And he goes, "Who?" I said, "In the Bible." He goes, "Father of Jesus?" I go, "No, the one in Egypt." He goes, "Not really." Anyway, I told him this entire thing that I'm going to tell you today. So I just love this, and he actually really enjoyed it. So we hope that this is a blessing for you today. Hebrews chapter 8, verse 10 says that in the new covenant, God is going to write his law on our hearts. that verse is quoted right out of Jeremiah chapter 31, verse 33, which says that in the new covenant, God's going to write his law in our hearts. But the Hebrew word there is Torah. And so in the new covenant, God wants his Torah to be written on our hearts. So for me, that was the bomb that went off in my life when I found out that Torah is supposed to be written on our heart. And what I'd like now is for the different people in the group here, these are people, by the way, I got to tell you, who've been doing this for years, and they're very serious about reading Torah in Hebrew. They work at it very hard. I could tell you stories about how hard some of these people have been working. And so I want to give them a chance now to talk about what motivates them to do this.
Shalom, I'm Chris Webster. I study Hebrew because that is the original language the Tanakh, the Old Testament, was written in. So by reading the Tanakh in Hebrew, I gain a better understanding of the original language, a better understanding of what is meant by the readings, and get closer to Jehovah, God Almighty.
My name is Bob Burry, and I started Hebrew 48 years ago in college. When I got out of the Army, I said, "Hey, I'd like to take biblical Hebrew." So I took Hebrew, and then I became more interested, and I decided I wanted to go to Israel, and so I applied to go work on a kibbutz. And it was a really neat experience. I was able to work half a day and study Hebrew half a day. And so I did that. That was clear back in beginning of January 71 when I went to Israel on the kibbutz. And so I studied Hebrew and modern Hebrew then. And I spent 7 or 8 months there on the kibbutz. I was a volunteer after the class ended. And then I went back and finished my degree. And the war broke out in 73. Well, all the men were taken into the military. And so there was just women and children that were milking the cows, 280 cows 3 times a day. And so they were really strapped for labor, really. And so I decided to go back to Israel and as a volunteer, and I milked cows for about 6 months. Wow. And just volunteering, and that was a real experience. And then I went back, and then in 75 I decided to go back, and I really missed Israel, so I went back, and I got a job teaching English. Never thought I'd be an English teacher. But they wanted somebody with a degree whose native tongue was English. So I taught at a language school in Haifa. So I had Russian and Israeli and Arab students. And it was a wonderful experience. And I met my wife, who was from Norway. And she was studying Hebrew, and I was studying Hebrew. We went to an Ulpan. And Ulpans are very nice in Israel because they encourage everybody to learn Hebrew, so they're free, and you can, wherever level you are, you go in and you say, well, I think I could handle level 2 or 3 or 1 or whatever. And they put you in a class and you meet other students from all over the world. So we took this Hebrew class, and she was my next door neighbor. And then eventually we got married. Well, we went to Norway. We had to go to Norway to get married. So I lived in Norway a couple of years. And then we came back to America and raised a family of 3 sons. And one of my sons went and got a minor in Hebrew when he went to university. So he became interested in Hebrew. And another son, he was very interested, and he tries to homeschool his boys in Hebrew. So that's really good. So we were very happy when we found a congregation that had some Hebrew and things. And Peter was offering a class. And so we were all at different levels. All of us come from different levels. Some people just knew the alphabet and were anxious to learn more. Other people knew more. So we all came in at different levels. I hadn't done Hebrew for many years, really. And so it was really good to get back into Hebrew. And so my wife and I just really enjoyed the class. And Peter had a really interesting class. He used to do a lot of all kind of things. Music. We did, he just introduced us to a lot of different things. And the Ben Gigi book that we used, and he still uses, I feel, and I've had other courses, and biblical Hebrew you can get very caught in the weeds of all the little technicalities. But I find Ben Gigi was very good that you could read the Torah, and if you couldn't read it, you could even read in some of the versions you could read the transliteration, and still read the Hebrew. And then as you picked up more and more, then you could figure out the various vowel points and things like that. So it was a very good course for us. And so we've continued on, and we're all doing different levels, but I think we really enjoy going over the Torah passage each week because we all get different insights. That's something that kind of sticks out at us. And the first year we were with Peter, we did the first chapter of the Torah. And then last year we did the second chapter of the Torah passage. And this year we're doing the third. So we're trying to just keep fresh new things that we're translating each year. And we sit around, we usually have a class of about 8 or 9, and we just enjoy each other's company and what insights he's given us. So thank you.
My name is Ann Voiles, and the reason I study the Hebrew is that I find that the original language has so many nuances that don't come through in the English translations. It gives me a much better understanding and feel for what Scripture actually says. And I feel that it draws me closer to him. It's the original language, and I feel that without understanding the background, we can't fully understand Scripture as it was really meant to be understood.
I'm Vonnie Fredland. I started trying to study Hebrew on my own about 5 years ago, and with different courses, and kind of struggled. I wasn't in a class, and then I volunteered in Israel for 3 weeks harvesting grapes, and I said, you know what, I really have to get serious about this. And so that was in the fall of 2014. When I returned home, I found out that our congregation was going to have a beginning Hebrew class. So that's where we got started with Peter's, and I was really happy about that. The reason I'm studying Hebrew and reading Hebrew is because I love the Jewish people and the land, and my heart is just to get closer to them and to the Lord, and to really understand what the Lord is saying in Scripture that gets lost in translation, and also what he's teaching us, because it's very connected. Somewhere you'll have a certain Hebrew word, and then it'll be connected somewhere else, and those things go together. And like you can let the Scripture interpret what the Scripture means by putting these puzzle pieces together. It's just fascinating. It's just that lovely language. It's hard sometimes, but I just encourage anybody to definitely try to get in a class, because the support of that and being there every week is really good. And to just keep going and try to get help from people if you need help. It's an awesome thing. I just love it.
Hi, my name is Jeanie Humphreys. I study Hebrew because at first I just wanted to learn new language, and Hebrew would be great because through my friend I got to know about Torah and wanted to know more. And as a Korean, my Bible says a lot of things that I could not understand a lot of times. Even English I could not understand. So I study Hebrew, and not 100%, but a lot I got answers. And Lord really opened my eyes and understand more and more, so I can be close to Him, and actually change my inner self. Yeah, because this words really touch and just make me understand what to do. So if I've been Christian for a long time, but I was just Christian outside, not so much change inside. But when as I do study Torah and writing Hebrew and learn more and more, and it really changed my heart and make me happier. And so I just keep writing and writing. So I just wanted to write whole Bible in next 2.5 years. So that's my goal. I already finished 5 books, so I calculated I think I can write whole thing, the rest of the Bible in about 2.5 years. That's my goal. I'm not trying to, learn this knowledge, but there's every day I write and I look at the letters, I feel like I am with God face to face, because of God. What is it? The Word is Him, actually. So I feel like I just with Him all the time when I write it. So I want to put this word, original language, put on my fingers and my eyes. I just want to put everything in my heart. That's all. That's why I do. And if anybody who wants to do it, I mean, it's so much fun. It's fun. Yeah, and Peter actually encouraged me to. Yeah. So that class was really helpful. So I studied by myself at first through YouTube and everything, but went to that class actually. See other people read together. It's like a slowly, and we get progress. Get better. Yep. Yep. Better and better. Yeah, it was fun.
All right. I'm glad you got to hear Jeanie explain it, because Jeanie terrifies the rest of us. And so Jeanie wrote out the Torah in Hebrew. It took about a year. And also I heard her talk about that previously, and she was very methodical about it. She has a special table set up in her home, I think in her living room. And she does, I think, an hour before breakfast every day. And she comes back and does more after breakfast. Took her about a year to write out Torah in Hebrew, which is about how long it takes a scribe to write out a Torah scroll. And you heard her say she's going to write out the whole Bible in Hebrew. I thought she meant the Tanakh. Well, she's already done the Song of Songs, Ruth, and she's doing Yochanan next, and she's done what other book in the New? Matthew already. And these are Hebrew. She's doing that. So when she says she's writing out the Bible in Hebrew, she means the Tanakh and the New Covenant. And so Jeanie is always full of surprises. All right, now we're going to take a look at the first verse of Torah portion Vayeishev, Genesis 37, verse 1, word by word, and Kellan will read.
Vayeishev.
The root is yashav. The vav means and the yod means he, so we can translate this, and he lived.
Yaakov.
The proper name of Jacob.
Be'eretz.
All right, that word appears twice in this verse. The beit means in, and then eretz is land or earth.
Megure.
The root is gur, which means to sojourn, abide, dwell in. And by putting a mem prefix, it makes it into a noun, sojourning place. It's also a construct, like B'nai Yaakov would be children of Jacob. And here we see Megure Aviv, meaning the sojourning place of his father.
Aviv.
Av is father, and the vav suffix makes it his father.
Be'eretz.
The same word we had before.
Canaan.
The proper name of Canaan. Now when you have understood and translated the verse, read it without any helps.
Vayeishev Yaakov be'eretz megure aviv be'eretz Canaan. And he dwelled Jacob in the land which dwelled his fathers in the land of Canaan.
Next week, our Torah portion is Miketz. That's when Pharaoh has his dream and Joseph interprets the dreams of Pharaoh and becomes a ruler in Egypt. That starts in Genesis 41, verse 1. Now we're going to take a look at the next few verses in Vayeishev.
Ella told the ot Okov Yosef ben Sheva Asra Sana Haya Roa Et Achav Bazov Vahu no Naad At B'nai Bilha Va'et B'nai Zilpa Nashei Aviv Vayava Yosef Et Dib Batam Ra'a El Havihim. These are the records of the generations of Jacob. Joseph, when 17 years of age, was pasturing the flock with his brothers while he was still a youth, along with the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought back a bad report about them to their father.
Notice the word of underlined there, Echav, his brothers. That's going to be important later. And also at the bottom, Dibatam Ra'ah. Can someone tell me why Ra'ah is in the feminine form? Because it has a hey on the end. We see the root for Ra'ah is Resh Ayin Ayin. So there's no hey in it, and that hey at the end is a feminine ending. Now that's an adjective, and the reason it's feminine is because it has to match the noun, which is Diba, the bad report. Diba is feminine singular. Anyone want to guess why there's a mem on the end of Dibatam?
So the mem at the end is there because it's referring to the men, the brothers. He's talking about the brothers. So that's masculine plural, Tom.
Exactly. So the mem makes the Dibatam. It's a evil report about them. But since Diba is feminine, it takes the feminine form of Ra'ah.
Shalosh. Ve'Israel ahav et Yosef mikol banav ki ven zikunim hu lo ve'asa lo kitonet pasim. And Israel loved Joseph more than all his brothers because he was the son of his old age, and made to him a coat with long sleeves. Many people say many colors, but some do them.
I've underlined Mikal, and the mem there, usually mem turns a verb into a noun, or it can mean from. Mem can mean from, but in this case it means more than all. So many times when you see mem, it means more than.
Vayeru Echav ki oto Achav Avihem mikol echad Vayeishev oto velo yachlu dabro leshalom. And his brothers saw that he was loved by their father more than all his brothers, and they hated him, and not could they endure to speak to him peaceably.
I've underlined ki oto ahav avihem mikol echad because that's some type of dependent clause. It explains why the brothers hated him so much. And it's also interesting because the normal pattern for biblical Hebrew is verb, subject, object. So in the first line of green, biblical Hebrew, normally it would say, loved their father, him. And the et points to the direct object, which is him. In our verse above, it's oto. That's a combination of et and the vav, meaning him. So ki oto means et, him. Now, that's a normal pattern for biblical Hebrew in green. The normal pattern for modern Hebrew and English would be subject, verb, object. And that would be their father loved et him. But here, what we're seeing here underlined is just a variety because we like to change it up in English and they like to change it up in Hebrew once in a while. So in this case, it's et him loved their father. Object, verb, subject.
Okay, hey. Vayechalo, Yosef, Chalom, Vayaged, La'achev, Vayosifu, Od, Sano, Oto. Joseph dreamt a dream, and he told it to his brothers, and they continued even more to hate him.
Every letter in the Hebrew alphabet has a meaning, it has a number, and it's a picture. In this case, the word sano is made up of the shin, nun, and aleph. The shin is teeth, like today you would say a dentist is a rofe hashanim, a doctor of teeth in Israel. So the teeth destroy. The nun is life, and the aleph stands for several things, one of which is strong or power. The reason I mention this is because Danny Ben Gigi, who wrote our Hebrew English Phonetic Bible, used to think this was ridiculous. And he was neighbors with Frank Seekins. They lived in the same town in Arizona. And Seekins tried to get him to read his book, and Danny wouldn't read it. And Seekins said, look, you don't believe any of this because, I can't even speak Hebrew, right? And Danny's like, well, yeah. And so what happened was one day Seekins took Danny to lunch, and Seekins said, look, just write down a word on the napkin, and I'll see if I can tell you what it means. So Danny wrote down sano on a napkin, and Seekins said, well, I don't know what the word is, but it's a powerful destroyer of life. And Danny says, I remember what I was eating because I almost choked on a lentil. I was eating lentil soup. And they became friends at that point. So a lot of people say that this is all, it's all made up, but Danny doesn't think so anymore. And also it helps you to remember the words. Like when you're learning vocabulary, sometimes looking at the picture meaning will help you remember that word.
Vav. Vayomer Elohim. Shimu'u na. Hachalom hu asher chalamti. He said that to them, here, please. This dream that I dreamt.
Notice he says ha-chalom, and then later chalamti. That word order is important. Notice the words are not together here. Later, those two words will be together, but they'll be different, and we'll point that out. Vehine, אנחנו מעלמים עלומים בתוך השדה, והנה כמה אלומתי וגם ניצבה, והנה תסובנה אלומותיכם ותשתחוונה לאלומתי. And behold, we were binding sheaves in the midst of the field, and behold, my sheaf stood up and arose and also stood up, and behold, your sheaves surrounded and bowed down to my sheaf.
ויאמרו לו אחיו, המלוך תמלוך עלינו, אם משול תמשול בנו, ויוסיפו עוד שנוא אותו על חלומותיו ועל דבריו. And they spoke to him, his brothers. You really think you will reign over us or have dominion over us? And they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words.
Okay, that word that Kellan read, hamaloch, and he made it into a question. And the reason for that is the first letter there, the hey. Anybody tell me what that hey is there?
The hey in this case has to do with it is indicating a question is being asked.
That's right. It's called an interrogative hey, and it's got the patach and shva vowels below it. So when you see that at the beginning of word, it's almost always starting off a question.
Chalom od. Chalom achar. Vayeishev ato la achav. Lai yomer hinne chalam ti chalom od vahinne hash shamesh vahai yarak vachard asar ko kavim mish tachavim li vai sapper. Oh, rolled into 10. Oops.
So excited.
I don't know where the English is. Now he had still another dream, and he related to his brothers, and said, Lo, I have had still another dream, and behold, the sun and the moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me.
All right, notice the word order there, chalamti, chalom, those two words together, that will be important later.
Eser. ויספר אל אביו ואל אחיו ויגרו בו אבי ויאמר לו מה החלום הזה אשר חלמת נבוא אני ואמך ואחיך להשתחוות לך ארצה. And he told to his father and to his brothers, and his father rebuked him and said to him, what is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall I and your mother and your brothers indeed come to bow down ourselves to you, to the earth?
There's the interrogative hey again. Havo, navo. Are we really going to come?
Vaikanu vo echav va'aviv shamar it chadbar. And they envied him, his brothers, and his father kept the word, or kept silent.
So Anne had that kept the word, and the ESV translates it kept the saying and adds in mind. And it reminds me of Luke chapter 2, verse 18, after the shepherds find the child. And all who heard it were amazed at what the shepherds said to them. But Mary treasured up all these things and pondered them in her heart. Jacob is learning something about his son Joseph here, and he's going to keep it in his heart. And it says there, Shamar et hadavar, keep or guard the word. What I'm going to talk about now is how Joseph knew what Pharaoh's dream meant. This is thanks to aleph-beta.org. David Foreman spelled this out, and I hope you enjoy this as much as I do. How did Joseph know that Pharaoh's dream of 7 cows and 7 cows meant 7 years of plenty and 7 of famine? We've talked about chiasms, sometimes pronounced chiasms, and these are patterns in the text where you get a concept A, and then at the end of the chiasm you have concept A, very similar. Then you have B and B, second to last, C and C, third to last, and it's all pointing toward the main point. This is a chiasm of Joseph's life. These are events in Joseph's life that lead him to the interpretation of the dream. Jacob married Rachel and Leah. Rachel is described as Yafat Toar, beautiful of form, and Leah's eyes are described as Rakot. Joseph was shepherding with Echav, his brothers. He says, Chalamti chalom, I dreamed a dream. His dreams were easily interpreted, but the family didn't like the interpretation. Jacob sent Joseph away to Shechem. Now, remember, Shechem is where they were afraid they were going to die because they killed the city and they were afraid that the surrounding cities would attack them. So the last memory that Joseph will have of his dad for 22 years is his dad sent him to the place where they almost died. Joseph's brothers stripped off his special coat. Joseph is thrown into a bore, a pit. We know that he was then sold into slavery. He worked in the home of Potiphar, accused of a crime he did not commit, and he ends up in prison, which is called the Beit HaSohar. But when Pharaoh has his dream and he's told that Joseph can interpret dreams, they have Joseph rushed out of the bore. They don't call it the Beit HaSohar anymore. They all of a sudden call it the bore. That's the last thing that happened to Joseph in Canaan. Then they change his clothes. The last thing that happened to Joseph before he was thrown in the bore was his special coat was stripped off. Somewhere along here, Joseph is going to begin seeing a pattern. He's called to Pharaoh instead of being sent away from Jacob. All want to hear the interpretation of his dreams, whereas before the family didn't want to hear his interpretation. So not only is it a reverse order, but every individual item is reversed. Pharaoh's dreams were so difficult to interpret, no one else could, whereas everyone was able to interpret Joseph's dreams. Pharaoh actually says, Chalom chalamti, the reverse of what Joseph said, chalamti chalom. Remember I pointed out, Joseph was shepherding with his brothers, Echav. In Pharaoh's dream, he says that the 7 cows were feeding ba'achu. Now, this is an unusual word. I think it only occurs here. And it's translated as meadow. Rambam, I think, translated it as swamp. Another sage, Onkelos, translated it as his brothers. And so in Pharaoh's dream, he might have been saying the cows were pasturing among their brothers. Pharaoh actually describes the fat cows as Yafat Toar. Now there are only two people in the entire Torah who are described as Yafat Toar. One is Rachel and one is Joseph. That's beautiful of form. And the skinny cows he describes as Rakot. Now, Rakot, when it was describing Leah's eyes, was spelled with a kaf, but Pharaoh is using a homonym, a word meaning gaunt or thin, that's spelled with a kuf. At this point, Joseph probably understands Pharaoh's dream is about Rachel cows and Leah cows. Pharaoh said that the skinny cows gobbled up the fat cows, and there was no sign left of the healthy fat cows, and the skinny cows didn't look any different. Remember when Joseph's brothers threw him into the pit? Joseph was gone, but the brothers didn't look any different. He disappeared, but they looked the same. The thing that doesn't make sense so far is there are 7 Rachel cows and 7 Leah cows, whereas there are 2 sons of Rachel and 6 sons of Leah. So this is the part that is tricky for Joseph to figure out what the 7 means. But if we go back further in history, remember when Jacob married Rachel and Leah, he worked 7 years for Rachel. When he found out he didn't get Rachel, he had to work another 7 years. So those first 7 were like they were gone. They just disappeared. And that's when Joseph figures out that cows equals years. If we're in this room and I want to say something aloud to Kellan without any of you understanding it, I can say, hey, Kellan, let's meet at our favorite ice cream place. And nobody else here knows where that is. But Kellan and I both know where it is. By the way, it's Cookie Cream at the Machane Yehuda Market in Jerusalem. All right, well, Anne thought that might have been it. So that we have to think of something better secret message than that. This gets even better because this is not just a dream for Pharaoh. As important as it was for saving Egypt, this is also a dream for Joseph. He's angry. This is now 22 years after they threw him in a pit and sold him. He's angry with them, and he messes with them. He arrests one of their brothers. He sends them back and says, you're not going to see me again unless you bring that youngest brother of yours. When they come back the next time, that memory of those 7 fat years is gone, but they're still eating the grain from those 7 years. And that's when Joseph realizes, regardless of how I feel about this, it's my job now to provide for my family. And so he then forgives his brothers. So there might be times when God communicates with us, not audibly, but through life experiences.
So I just want to add that chiasm type thing is another reason why it's really awesome to study Hebrew, because if you just read your normal English Bible, you're never going to see that. You're never going to figure that out. I guess you could, but it's so amazing in Hebrew to see God communicating with you in that way. It's amazing.
I think it's amazing when we read the Hebrew text. In the Hebrew, we're reading words and verses and chapters that are 3,000-4,000 years old. You know, this is probably the oldest manuscripts, oldest documents on earth.
Now we'll close with the Avinu, and Kellan will quote it for us.
Avinu shebashamayim, yitkadesh shimcha, v'yitbarech malchutcha, ratzoncha yeh asui, bashamayim uva'aretz, v'titen lachmedu temidit, umechol lanu chatutenu, כאשר אנחנו מוחלים לחוטאים לנו, ואל תביאנו לידי ניסיון, ושמרנו מכל רע. אמן.
On my last volunteer trip to Israel, I learned a little bit about this prayer that Yeshua gave to us, and that is that when you study with a rabbi, they would have their own prayer that the rabbi would give to the disciples, and this is the one that he gave. This would identify them as being Yeshua's disciples because they prayed that prayer.
Cool. Isn't that cool? Thank you. Thank you for joining us for our Hebrew class. We hope that you get closer to the written word Torah and the living word Yeshua. Until next week and Torah portion Miketz, we like to say, Shalom!